Welcome to Redacted on this Tuesday. I'm Clayton Morris.
I'm Natali Morris.
And on this show, our goal is to seek the truth wherever it takes us, covering the stories the mainstream media largely ignores. We cut through the propaganda, and we welcome our redacted rebel army here on the show. So if you're watching the show, you've rejected mainstream media, you are a rebel. And I love some of the changes we've seen in Italy, right? We've seen some major changes recently, and where literally supporting the family is now considered rebellious. Wanting to make sure that you're taking care of your own family, your own people, that's considered rebellious. That's
right.
Where we are these days.
Gardening is now an act of rebellion, which makes us super rebellion. Having your own chickens, right? My sister asks if tonight's show is going to scare her, because last night we talked a lot about the rhetoric around nuclear war. There still is that, but there is a lot of progress in the news, specifically East meets West. So we're going to follow that trail and see where it leads us.
So we are going to talk about what is happening with Vladimir Putin readying a massive amount of troops at the border. The mobilization has been unfolding this afternoon, and we have some major movements in the Donbass region this afternoon. In fact, voting just wrapping up, and vote tallies now complete, which has been amazing. So we're going to take you there. We also have, of course, major developments on the Nord Stream pipelines. We're going to bring you the very latest on that sabotage and destruction, literally putting Europe into a cold winter with no energy, no natural gas. Germany is going to be in a world of hurt this afternoon. So we will tell you about that.
And we know who the major players are, East meets West, right? We know it's China, Russia versus the United States and the European Union. And we are increasingly watching the countries that exist on the margin that are having to be diplomatic, Serbia being one of them. Now, the European Union is not happy with Serbia because they do not continue to kiss the ring of the EU,
to bend the knee
and
of the EU.
So they are in big trouble. They have some splaining to do.
They're
says the West.
They're in EU timeout. Yeah, it's going to be interesting. So we'll bring you the Serbia news. We'll also have a big story on. Well, I don't even know how to say this, so I'll let you say.
Let me say it.
Yes.
An investigation from the Telegraph in the United Kingdom finds that state-funded trans rights advocacy groups are giving children breast binders without their parents' consent. In fact, this investigation found that this organization, which receives taxpayer money in the United Kingdom, offered to send young children breast binders and mail them anonymously so that parents would not find out. We're going to talk about transgender rights and how this is increasingly something on the ballot, but I do not think politicians have any interest in getting it right. And we're going to talk about who is benefiting from this, right? Certainly not children that are told that we can leave, we can do things to your body without your parents' consent. We're going to talk about this. It's a story that really sets my hair on fire.
And we're also going to talk about UFOs, because a United States department updated its logo that includes some really eye-opening iconography, among other things, and some reports specifically around the UAPs, UFO investigation phenomenon, the reverse engineering of craft. So we are going to talk UFOs, government involvement in this. This is a safe place. No one will ridicule you for having an open mind. Welcome in as Redacted starts right now. In our chat just says he saw a UFO last weekend.
Oh yeah.
Welcome, Eric. Welcome. Last night, my son and I, we got the telescope out, the massive Orion telescope, the big boy, and we were looking at Jupiter, because Jupiter was at its closest point and will be at its closest point in 100 years to Earth last night.
And we were able to see some of the moons. Yeah, that was very exciting.
Oh, that's crazy. While you were looking at Jupiter, I was looking at Uranus.
We walked into that one.
No, don't walk into it, and don't touch it.
Yeah, don't walk into that.
Don't touch it. Hey, welcome into Redacted on this Tuesday. So glad to have all of you here. Please subscribe to the channel. And at the beginning, I should mention, please just smash that like button. I know many of you do it, but it really helps us to push us further out into the algorithm because, you know, YouTube likes to censor and block this type of content. So please, when you do that, it actually pushes us out to people that might have missed the show. So it really, really helps. It's not just a vanity thing. It really actually helps in the algorithm. So thank you, thank you, thank you. You want to tell them about the newsletter?
Sure. We have a newsletter. A lot of these stories from today's show will be in that newsletter, plus a whole lot more. It's free. You can sign up at redacted.inc. That is also where we host our community that takes place off of social media platforms where we cannot control what we are and are not allowed to say. In the newsletter, we say lots of things that maybe we couldn't say on a broadcast platform, and that's very liberating. It's, you know, it's informative. It's a bit fun, I like to say, and it's written by the both of us. So please subscribe. It's free. It costs you nothing.
Yeah, redacted.inc, not .com, .inc. All right, let's get to our big story, which is something big is about to happen in Ukraine, guys. We know it's about to happen because, well, you know, I mean, history teaches us things, right? And when you have a massive mobilization of forces on the Russian side, things are going to happen. When you have a referendum that just wrapped up in the Donbass where we actually have results now, things are going to happen.
Well, let's get to those results so you have some context. Now, you know, over the last 4 days, there's been a referendum of these regions in Ukraine, the Donbass area, voting whether or not they want to join Russia. Now we can bring you the news that the early polling shows that those regions absolutely did vote to rejoin Russia, which means that within the coming hours, Russia could decide that its borders are moved further south. Those places now belong to Moscow, and they will then defend them as such.
Wyatt Reed.
And the propaganda machine, I just wanted to say, has already started too, because they're already saying that the Putin's forcing this, that it's, you know, not legit, like he's interfering in the election, he's forcing people.
Right. We have not, it has been really hard to find images of these people who are willingly walking themselves to the polls and you know, happily submitting their ballots and coming out in exit polls. Those things have not been shown to us.
Yeah. Well, first of all, let's be clear. Western media is not going to show you that. The Western media is not going to show you the coverage that we've brought you here on this show, the coverage of Vanessa Beeley and Eva Bartlett and Wyatt Reed and other journalists and Patrick Lancaster who have been there, boots on the ground, covering the polling. And there's been no force. There's been nobody forcing anyone to vote at all. They can walk into polling places and vote. These journalists have been following around these individuals as they hand out ballots, and they've been able to vote on their own without any force at all.
Well, in fact, there was intimidation by the Ukrainian government. They were threatened if they did vote. If this vote went another way and Ukraine absolutely did take back those places, these people would be punished, or so said the Ukrainian government.
They also bombed polling places. Let's be very clear. The Ukrainians did, in fact, do that. So we have the confirmation of that, and we actually have the weapons and the scraps of American weapons that they use to do this. So again, you can dive into it. It's very easy to find this, but we should point out, I want to pull up Wyatt Reed's post here. I don't know, I'm skipping ahead a little bit because we kind of went out of order, but that's fine. Wyatt Reed put up a post just a short time ago, and he spoke to a DPR official who confirmed to him that Russia is likely to elevate its special military operation to an anti-terrorist operation. So guys, this is about to happen. It's an anti-terrorist operation following the results of the referendum for Russian realignment, and may even declare the Kiev regime a terrorist state if it launches attacks on the regions. So this moves now from a special military operation against these 4 regions to provide safety and security and liberation, but now it moves to an anti-terrorist operation. Now just think about that for a second. Think about how the United States has launched a global war on terror. It's like an open-ended, never-ending. And if Ukraine wants to play this and they want to attack these areas now, that they will officially become part of Russia, it is game over for them. It is absolutely game over. So let's go back a little bit, because some major developments happened in apart from just the referendums today. But we actually saw U.S. and Russian warships. Russian warships and Chinese warships spotted off the coast of Alaska, working together spotted by Coast Guard off the Alaska overnight and into this morning. And also speaking on this, Russia's Sergei Lavrov telling the United Nations also that the U.S. is directly involved in this war. Make no mistake about it, they are directly involved in this war. We saw CIA leaked documents yesterday that are showing precise, pinpoint precision where Russian forces are located, what boxes they are unloading from trucks, what munitions they have that they're moving around, and they're giving this directly to the Ukrainian military. The Ukrainian military is working in lockstep with NATO forces, launching HIMARS attacks on these targets. Sergei Lavrov saying this: "The United States is by no means neutral in this situation and is a party to the conflict," Michael Tracy points out. Lavrov said, "If anyone has an interpretation of this other than setting the groundwork for the purported legality of a strike against the United States, I'm all ears." Think about that. The United States is by no means neutral and is a party to conflict, Sergei Lavrov said. If anyone has an interpretation of this other than setting the groundwork for the purported legality of a strike against the United States, I'm all ears. He goes on to say, as could have been surmised, Sergei Lavrov also says the newly annexed Ukraine territories will be unquestionably under the full protection of the state of Russia and all of the laws, doctrines, concepts, and strategies of the Russian Federation, which presumably includes the nuclear doctrine.
Yeah. I mean, you wonder how fast you can move on this to actually sort of absorb a whole territory into your nation state.
I asked Eva Bartlett that question.
Well, for years now, the people in that region who do most of the mining of resources that is sent to Kiev, most of their money, most of their resources, and they get very little in return, or at least that is most of the sentiment if you read history of this region. So, will they now start to get resources that they need for the people who live there beyond protection, right? Protection is, of course, paramount. But other things, school, funding, ID documents,
water,
all of these things.
Electricity, yes. And we've already seen this in certain areas where, of course, we saw it in Mariupol, where they came in with cement trucks and building equipment and started with a convoy of semi-trucks rolled in and started building apartment complexes. So the voters, I've watched a number of these voters who voted in the referendums speaking out saying, maybe finally I'll get electricity.
Right.
Maybe finally I'll get infrastructure. Maybe finally I'll have schooling again. Yes. So prepare. I mean, who knows? It could be awful, right? We don't know, right? But it could be exactly what these people voted for, which is an overwhelming support. I asked Eva Bartlett that question. How quickly can they assume this infrastructure? How quickly can they roll them into Mother Russia? And she said, well, just look at Crimea. Happened very fast. Very, very fast. So again, they have a history of this. And they know how to roll these communities in, for better or for worse. Here they go.
Now, as we are broadcasting right now, the United Nations Security Council is meeting to discuss this referendum in Ukraine, and mostly Western leaders, although some Eastern. There was a representative from Mexico, one right now speaking from the UAE. We obviously cannot watch that at the same time we are broadcasting to you. So we will wait to see what the official reaction from the West and other non-Western countries as well is on this. But we kind of already know,
right, based
on what they've been telling us before voting even started. They told us that they didn't think it was legitimate. They were not prepared to recognize it. We'll see, though, because this is not like other Russian separatist areas, such as the one we discussed recently in, not Romania,
Armenia.
No, you guys, I'm so sorry. We discussed recently, of course, Crimea. We've been discussing
Well, think about it.
Okay.
We'll come back to that. A few other big points we want to cover. Number one, over the past 48 hours, there have been almost no videos and no reports coming from the Ukrainian side. It's very mysterious, actually, from military journalists covering this. It's been silence. Like, what the hell is going on? Nothing. We've been seeing video all along. We have. Now we don't. We don't see anything. No birds chirping, nothing. And when I say birds chirping, I'm being metaphorical here. So something is happening. The second point I want to make is the massing of forces along the Ukrainian border. Again, this massive mobilization unfolding today. You can see all up and down the 1,000-kilometer border, This is just and again, these are reservists. A lot of reservists who are being called up, the 300,000 reservists. And I'm going to show you some of the military convoy trucks, the airport, the large, the heavy weapons, the heavy bombers, all arriving and ready to go. Guys, pay attention to what's happening here. Like, this is going to be massive. So if there are attacks, prepare for hell to be unleashed on this area. And again, it's going to be all eyes on what the hell NATO does in response. Do they bluff or do they elevate?
Thank you, chat room. It was Moldova. We did that piece just 2 weeks ago. And again, they do have a Russian separatist region, but is not connected directly to the heartland. And so, what Russia will be able to defend this area so much better because it's just right there, right? These logistics absolutely matter.
So a couple more areas I want to show you as well. So this is Sevestopol. This is after this afternoon. I'm going to play this. This is them getting ready and getting ready to mobilize. Watch. So again, we're seeing these areas all over the place with this mobilization happening. 300,000 reservists being called up to join the already 200. This is a very important point. So again, here is the propaganda that you're being spoon-fed. 300,000 reservists being called up to join, and they're going to go through training again, refresh it. It's like the American reserves. It's the same thing. We saw this in Afghanistan and Iraq with the U.S. Marines. We had to call up reserves. We had to. The forces were so depleted, they had to call up reserves, and the reserves are already active military. They what do they go once a month? I guess I know I've known some reservists, but they go like once a month for training. So what they'll be doing is training in preparation for this. These are not like random people off the street. These are people who are who had already been a part of the military. And the way that the Western media go ahead.
I was just going to say, those forces are supposed to be reserved for things that might happen in the United States, like a hurricane or something like that. So now our resources are going to be spread thin because we're sending people over there.
Well, no, I was referring to Afghanistan and Iraq. Like, this has happened back in 2006. We don't know how many forces are totally in this area, but 2006, we did the same thing, is my point. It's like, we called up reservists. Like, this happens. Like, you have members of the military who've gone through basic training before. They've gone through the training. They're just not there every day. They're sort of, they call them like weekend warriors, I guess.
Right.
Anyway, these are people who are members of the military. They are reservists, but it hasn't stopped the Western media from saying that Putin has initiated a massive draft. Okay, they're just pulling people off the street. It's a massive draft, they're calling it.
In fact, I saw some sort of ignorant, gloating headlines yesterday when it was announced that Edward Snowden would get a Russian passport and citizenship. Some people were saying, I hope he doesn't get drafted.
He's going to get drafted now that he's a citizen.
Ridiculous.
He's a fighting age. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, just look at how the Western media is spinning this. This is NBC News. It's propaganda right on their screen, calling it a draft and using old footage, by the way, in this little compilation to make it look like people are being attacked. Watch this.
Triggered by Russian President Vladimir Putin's decision to force hundreds of thousands of ordinary Russians to the front lines.
Like, look at that draft, the war over the draft, and they're pulling out. I mean, it's crazy, the propaganda. Here's Lester Holt from NBC. Watch this.
Turn now to Russia and the growing backlash to Russian President Vladimir Putin's order to draft 300,000 more troops to fight in Ukraine.
And look at the imagery, right? They show like people being carted off. They show hundreds of cars like going for the border, like all of this imagery. And so we'll see. Like, we will see. I asked Scott Ritter about this very question, former UN weapons inspector, and I said, so how will, I talked to him the other day, I said, how will this play out, these 300,000? Are they going right to the front line? And he said, no, here's exactly how it will unfold. Those 300,000 will be support forces. So think about it. They have 200,000 right now for the special military operation. And they have a back section of the front, right? Not up on the front. About 60,000 are currently fighting on the front lines. And 140 are back, and they're supporting areas like Belgrade and Kursk, and to make sure that area doesn't get invaded inside Mother Russia. So those support forces have been back. Now, that 140 support forces that are sharp as attack but have been off the battlefield will now go to the front, and the 300,000 will now relieve them in the back. and that's support. And they'll be brought up to speed. So 500,000, 200,000 of which are ready to go and are battle ready and are, sharp as a tack with a rifle and are, highly trained, are now going to be going to the front.
This is really terrifying, though.
Well, yeah. Well, it is terrifying, but here's what's happening.
It's still, you can't talk about this without thinking these are people's family members. No,
of course.
We cannot remove ourselves
war is ugly.
from this.
War is ugly. War is awful. Like, this is the point, right? And for 8 years, a region has been attacked and there's been genocide against the people who are just wanting to live their lives, right? At the heart of all of this is we want peace, right? A peace agreement that has been stepped on by the West.
Yes.
Fly Boris Johnson in from the UK and kill it twice when there's peace in the wings.
Right.
And I apologize. I misunderstood. I thought you said that Ukraine was sending in reservists and they were sending in U.S. reservists. That's what I
don't know. Yeah. No, I was just using it as an example from 2006. So
no, but we are giving reserved funds. Congress has already approved another $12 billion from the United States to be sent abroad. And over the weekend, Vladimir Putin admitted that the United States is currently sending $1.5 billion every month, like a direct deposit, even though Ukraine is operating at a $5 billion loss. So, that's already committed. Because,
what are they spending this money on?
War is expensive, I assume. Just, it's interesting
but they're
because
getting
it's
the weapons free. They're getting the ammunition free. Like, what are they, you know what I mean? Like, we're sending them all of that stuff and the money.
Well, because there's no accounting of it, right? It's just literally, and Zelensky admitted yesterday that the United States is sending on a regular schedule now upwards of about $1.8 or so billion per month, like on auto deposit. So it's just automatically going there.
Yeah.
Automatically going there. Now, like, we're going to see Florida with a natural disaster. Obviously, Hurricane Ian is bearing down Category 3 on its way to Florida right now. We saw the people of Puerto Rico, of course, underwater dealing with that catastrophe. It's like, where are the priorities from the United States right now?
Right.
Where are the priorities from NATO, which we'll get to right now? Because a few hours ago, something unbelievable happened. Something mysterious at first seemed to be unfolding in the Baltic Sea. Was it an accident? Russia's Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which is set to deliver natural gas to Germany, suddenly began leaking, or did it? And then Danish authorities say it was destroyed. Holy shit. What? Nord Stream 1, Nord Stream 2, pipelines that deliver natural gas to Europe, to Germany?
I mean, this is the pipeline. We've been discussing this for months. This is the pipeline that's keeping affordable energy in all of Europe, that Europe has been freaking out and saying to Russia, please do not turn this off. We want to have a fight with you, but you need to keep the resources coming. So now there is a major leak, and seismologists are saying there was some disruptive event that they did not think was natural. Like, it wasn't attributable to an earthquake or some kind of other natural event.
And it happened simultaneously. So this is how German journalists this afternoon say the attack happened at the same time. Watch this as breaking news on Bloomberg, how this unfolded. Watch.
What do we know and what don't we know about the Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 damage?
Yeah, so we know that things happened almost simultaneously. So we saw pressure dropping in both Nord Stream and Nord Stream 2 pipelines, and Nord Stream operators
simultaneously.
said that actually there is no clue. They cannot say, it's impossible to say when flows can resume.
Yeah, because they're destroyed. They are destroyed. Just to paint some a picture for you, I've spent most of my afternoon knee deep in like natural gas physics, which is not how I thought I would spend my afternoon.
I could make a fart joke about your being in natural gas, but
it's taco night. It's taco night. So Swedish authorities this afternoon said they saw explosions coming from the pipeline, and they released this video. This is from Swedish authorities. Look at this. So just take a look at this screen here. This is under the dark of night. Okay. This is using I guess it's like FLIR technology or whatever, nighttime. So this was happening as we were waking up overnight, and you're going to get some different images here. They call it like the Great Eye, because we saw something similar to this. Look at the bubbling pouring out, right? Now, think about how many hundreds of square kilometers of wildlife and just absolute catastrophe that this is causing now. We saw something similar to this in the Gulf of Mexico, where it also then caught on fire. So you had all sorts of fire trucks that were literally water fire trucks. They're pouring as much water as they could to try to contain it. Fortunately, this one's not on fire. But nevertheless, this is what's happening right now. Unbelievable. Pipelines exploding. The Polish government is actively, here's what's so stunning to me, is that this afternoon, just a short time ago before we came on the air, the Polish government actively thanking the United States for attacking this pipeline. Here is the top Polish member of the European Parliament thanking the USA for this attack. Thank you, USA.
Oh, you just froze millions of people to death for this winter. You just sentenced millions to not being able to heat their homes. Thank you. We're so glad. Now we'll learn to chop wood, right?
Can you believe
or
this?
Something.
No, and you can't even chop wood in Germany because they're making sure that you're going to pay, they're like sanctioning you can't chop wood. And he goes on to say, again, this is Radoslaw Sikorski. He's the member of European Parliament from Poland, and he says this in Polish. He says, but then as we say in Polish, a small thing, but so much joy. He's literally gleeful about the destruction of a natural gas pipeline to Germany.
Also, he is no friend of sea creatures, clearly.
Right. I mean, so just to give you some physics behind this, the pressure dropped, and according to the Berliner Zeitung this afternoon, pressure dropped now in not only just in Nord Stream 2, it also happened in Nord Stream 1. This was no accident, clearly. I talked to ex-CIA analyst Larry Johnson earlier today. He said, barring that it's being an accident, clearly this was sabotage, clearly. And so does German newspapers and German press believe it was sabotage as well. And so do German authorities. Here's the Berliner Zeitung. Just a few hours after the gas leak on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, Nord Stream 1 now also reports massive problems. Both tubes are affected. The leak was noticed for the first time on Monday night. And according to the Nord Stream 2 operators, the pressure dropped, listen to this, from 105 bars to just 7. That is impossible. That is clearly, they say, a sign of sabotage. Because according to pipeline experts, a drop in pressure to 7 bars literally means that it's filled with seawater. Like there's not like a little leak and those little bubbles coming up. It's
now, before the West
seawater.
tells us that Russia did this in order to, turn off the gas, you can remember that they have the spigot. They could just turn it off if they wanted to do that, right? First of all, they built it. Second of all, this does cost them money. And third of all, they could have just turned it off. They didn't need to destroy anything.
Right. Again, and why would they? It makes zero sense.
No, it doesn't.
They spent billions of dollars, Russia did, to build this pipeline. Why in the world? And they, by the way, had that Nord Stream 2 pipeline filled with natural gas and ready to deliver to Germany. All they were waiting on was Olaf Scholz to give the go-ahead. That's it. But of course, under the pressure of the United States, they didn't flip it on. It never started flowing. And I said right here on this show, the moment that the Nord Stream 2 pipeline starts flowing to Germany, war over. Like Europe is done. Europe has said enough is enough. And now the opposite has happened. They've blown the frickin' thing up. Like, did you think you'd wake up this morning and literally hear that these major pipelines to Europe for all of these people for this winter would be blown up by the United States?
I did see some discussion, and I have not been able to verify this because this is such a breaking story, that, this could be down for at least a few days. And I was like, a few days?
No way.
Okay. What is that? Miracle tape? Is that what we're going to use?
Yeah, what's his name? Yeah, the guy that does in the boat. He's like, I'm Billy May.
Oh,
with
use
Miracle.
the spray foam
Yeah.
that patches up a boat. We'll see. Now is the time to prove yourself.
You can hold bricks with it and fix a pipeline.
I was reading up on this also today, and like just kind of like along with what you were saying, this pipeline was never turned on the German side. So it was just like, it was basically like, it was full of gas just because Russia was ready for them to turn it on. They never did. So it shut off on both ends. So the pipe was just like, it's just the pressure that was in there from it being filled and ready. But like both ends are shut off. There'd be no reason to destroy this pipeline.
Yeah.
And so
it doesn't make any sense.
Again, they were all sitting there waiting, and the German people, of course, are in for a dire winter now. And of course, again, German authorities say it was sabotage. And according to multiple German newspapers, they say it was a targeted attack. Of course, the early report says, it must have come from Ukraine or it came from Russia, like Russia attacked its own pipeline.
That it was not using yet to serve gas.
Total garbage. You can throw that propaganda right out the window. And by the way, if Ukraine attacked it, it was directed entirely by the United States. It was absolutely directed by the United States. So you have Poland thanking the United States for attacking a pipeline. German people, by the way, over the past few days, thousands of Germans, which has been kept out of the mainstream media because they don't want you to see that there's discontent in Germany, have been taking to the streets, and they were demanding the launch of the Nord Stream 2. This was German protests just over the past 24 hours, saying, turn this thing on. We are going to be freezing. This was Germany over the past few days.
Looks to me like they're already freezing based on these photos.
Yeah, I mean, the photos in this press brief, yeah.
It is about to get much colder.
But I want to come back to I think the biggest point of all of this is that what President Biden said specifically back in February on the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, when asked specifically by a German reporter, I want you to listen to what he says about it not being turned on and how the United States would make sure that the Nord Stream 2 pipeline does not happen. Watch.
Let me answer the first question first. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
We will bring an end to it.
But how will you do that exactly? Since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control.
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
Okay.
If Russia invades, he says, there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it. The reporter says, but how will you do that exactly, since the project is in Germany's control? I promise you, we will be able to do that. We know the Western media is going to try to push that this is Russian sabotage. This makes zero sense. It costs Russia billions of dollars to build this pipeline. That would be like the United States blowing up its own transcontinental railroad. Mm-hmm. Like for what? For like a PR move? You think they're going to do this? That's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And of course, this is all part of the plan to crush Europe. This is,
yes, we have discussed this, right?
And you're seeing it right now. Look at the U.S. liquefied natural gas exports over the past year. This is just from the past year. The amount has doubled. The amount has doubled now from the United States. Of course, United States stands to do this. Many German politicians have been urging the Bundestag to change its position on this and start using the pipeline, which is now destroyed. And it has an annual capacity of 55 billion cubic meters. It's right. It's a direct pipeline right there, right to Germany. No, instead we're going to import it now from the United States. So you have to ask yourself the question in these situations, who does this benefit the most? The U.S. is the number one country that benefits from a destroyed Nord Stream pipeline.
Right. And a weakened Europe.
Yes.
Absolutely. Right.
At a destructive Europe. I mean, think about, we played the Rand Corporation. We showed you the leaked Rand Corporation documents last week on this show. If you watched, hopefully you saw that show where we talked about it.
If not, you can search it.
Yes, please go and search it. Well, the Rand report specifically showed, it was titled, the Rand report was called Weakening Germany, Strengthening the U.S., with the ultimate goal of being the infusion of cash into the banking system by Europe and NATO, and also specifically talks about the greatest obstacle to achieving this goal of power for the United States and Western hegemony is Germany. Specifically, they talk about its dependence on Russian gas. If we could somehow eliminate that piece of it, I guess, then we could position the United States more strongly. And they're getting their wish because now the British pound is collapsed against the U.S. dollar. The euro is collapsed against the U.S. dollar. And the United States is looking, I guess, United States dollar is stronger again as a result of this.
Right. And they're happily sort of ignoring these grassroots protests all throughout Europe with people saying, we don't want to align with these Western priorities any longer. But it almost doesn't seem to matter. And European politicians continue, for whatever reason, to just step in lockstep to collapse their own economies for priorities that do not have much to do with Western nations. It's very perplexing. Beyond just, you just wonder, like, what do they have on you? Why are they making you do this, to act outside of your own interest?